Hey everyone, welcome back to the Young Adult Podcast here for Harbor Point Church. We are back with another episode today. We have Lexi Schwartz and Dorian Johnson here with us today. This is going to be an awesome one. We are super excited to talk about this. We're going to be talking about testimonies, why they are important to not only our story, but other people's story, and just how to share it and just how to talk about our testimonies. As Christians, our own story is a big part of this, and how we share that can be the difference of, sharing the gospel of who Jesus is and who Jesus has been for us. And so we're just going to be talking about that, breaking down some barriers within this, and just having good chats about this. So we're excited to get into this. So guys,
let's do this.
Let's talk about this. We have a couple of different ways we can start going about this. Dorian, I know you have a great scripture to share. So why don't we go ahead and first off discuss this of biblical background of sharing our testimony. So if you want to go ahead and get into that, let's do it.
Yeah. All right, Bible time. Came
Bible
extra
time,
prepared.
good old Bible time.
Like the Great Commission, right? Matthew chapter 28, verses 19 and 20.
Right.
Like Jesus says a bunch of stuff, basically says like, hey, go tell the world about me. All right. And that's kind of intimidating. So it's like, where do you even start,
Right.
Like, I got to tell everybody about Jesus. But like that is it's a selfish thing, but it works. Just start with yourself, just share your testimony. Like God has called us to spread the word as best we can, and we can do that using us. It's pretty cool. Because at some point or another, I think we've all met Jesus, right? Yeah. But basically, like
never in the flesh, but
no, not yet.
Never in the flesh, but we're getting there slowly but surely.
One day.
We
see the story in John chapter 4. Like Jesus has this encounter with, we call it the woman at the well, or the Samaritan woman, and it's like this great encounter. They go back and forth, and they have this conversation, and Jesus like says a lot of things to her. And then she does something very interesting. Where was it? Verse 28, it says this. Then the woman left her water jar, went into town, and told the men, come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? They left the town and made their way to him. It's really interesting about that, because she goes to the town. She goes to where like everybody she knows.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, hey, I just met this guy and he knows all about me and he's saying these amazing things. Come check it out. And they do that. And it says in verse 39, now many Samaritans from that town believed in him because of what the woman said when she testified.
Right.
Therefore, when the Samaritans came to him, they asked him to stay with him and he stayed there for 2 days. Many more believed because of what he said. And it's such a clear picture for me. And this is what I tried to drive to my junior hires. Like your testimony is not about you. Like it's such a backwards thing, but it's not about you. It's not about what you have done or what like you're doing. It's about what God did for you.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Like the woman at the well, she puts it perfectly. Like he told me everything about me. He is saying some amazing things. Mm-hmm. And then she says, like she's not trying to convert anybody. She just says, hey, come check it out.
Yeah.
Like come check it out. Come see for yourself. And they go check it out because of what she said. And then once everybody sees Jesus, many more believe because of what he said.
Yeah.
Like our testimony, it feels so we're backwards, but it's not about us. Mm-hmm. It is about what God has done for us. Right. Whether that's something that happened yesterday or 2,000 years ago on the cross, but it's always about what God has done for us. It's not about us,
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I love the story of the woman at the well. It's been one of my favorite biblical stories for a very long time, just because we see this story of this pretty broken woman,
Yeah.
And Jesus meets her where she's at and, creates this story of, how much Jesus loves her through everything that she's been through, and that she ends up going and shares it with her community, and it brings even more people to know Jesus through that. I think it's such an important story to see that, the story of this broken person and everything that she's been through. Jesus used that to be able to share with other people and bring more people to know him. Mm-hmm. I think that's such an important thing to see, that our own testimony that Jesus has created through us. Mm-hmm. He wants to use our story to bring other people to know him.
Yeah.
So I think that was a really important story to share. But yeah, it's so unbelievable to think that our own personal story that Jesus has created through us can be shared to show God's love. And like you said, that it's not the story of us. You know, if it was the story of us, we wouldn't be bringing many people, because our story is not that exciting. It's not that great, you know, but the story that Jesus creates in us and walks alongside with us is an incredible story to look at and show.
Yeah.
Because of course he brings pretty impossible things or pretty broken things to be amazing through him.
Yeah.
You know?
And to go alongside that, like, if it was a story of us, ultimately someone would have to be the winner. Like, it would be like we would all just be one-upping each other. It's like, okay, who has the greatest testimony?
Right.
If the testimonies are about us, it's like someone on earth is going to have the greatest testimony ever. Like the hardest life, or the most trials, as my brother would say, the most rocks in your road.
Yeah.
Like it's not about that. And if we make it about that, then someone on earth is going to be the winner. And I don't think any of us deserve that type of title. So it's fascinating.
It's incredible to think about that, you know, Jesus specifically creates a single story in us, you know, that each one of us have our own individual story. Of course, some of them might be similar to one another, but just because, you know, we're human, we do pretty similar things in our life, you know, that they can end up being similar, but each one is so individually woven that Jesus created in us that we get to use to show other people what Jesus did in us, so that hopefully, you know, their own stories could be created through Jesus as well.
Yeah.
And of course, I think it's important to know also that even though our stories might, again, be similar, they are individual to us, you know, and to think that some of us might be sitting here today, especially to those of you who are watching or listening, you know, you might be sitting there thinking, well, I don't have a testimony, I don't have a story. And we just want to let you know that you definitely do. Lexi, you know, you were telling us beforehand that, you know, how important that is to know. And I don't know if you want to share more about that.
Yeah. I think I have felt a conviction in my life that I have not done well in sharing my testimony. I think that as you grow up and as you get old and the more things you face, you kind of do experience a little bit within the church community sometimes of, well, my testimony is harder than yours, or like, let me share. And everyone, like, I don't know, it becomes a comparison game. And so I think in rebellion of joining the comparison game, I've always wanted to keep kind of quiet about the things that I've experienced in my life and the way that I've seen God's faithfulness, which it's so, it's really truly selfish. Like ultimately, that's a selfish act, because the Lord has done some like I've been so blessed that the Lord has done some truly amazing things in my life, and I should be like shouting from the mountaintops about what God has done. It's funny because we read the Bible and we really truly read testimonies of people in the Bible, and we look at that and we're like, wow, God really used that person, and God did these amazing things. And like, it's crazy to think that God moves like this, like all the time now. Like even this week, like I had an absolute miracle where my car broke and I was going to have to pay like thousands of dollars to fix my car, like thousands of dollars that I absolutely don't have. I was like, I'm going to die. This is horrible. And I got a call saying that they found a warranty that made it so I didn't have to pay a cent. Like, I have like my car is now fixed. I actually get to pick it up tomorrow. And nothing nothing happened. And I just prayed to the Lord. I'm like, Lord, you know, I don't have thousands of dollars to fix my car. Like, I just don't. And I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so frustrated. I didn't like scramble, but even that, like the provision of the Lord, knowing that I don't have thousands of dollars to throw at my car, even that I can attribute to like the goodness and the provision of God. And so it's like, these are just little things that in our day to day, if I read a Bible story where like we read that back then, like, I don't know, some Bible character was given like, I don't know what, thousands of dollars, millions of dollars back then. And we would be like, whoa, God did something amazing for them. And that was just this week for me. And so it's selfish of me. And ultimately it's like, I don't even know what scripture specifically, so I'm not going to like pretend quote it, but I know I'm not going to be like, oh, it's in the book, but there's a scripture that talks about hiding your lamp under a clay jar. And basically when we don't share our testimonies, when we're not willing to share the good things God has done in our life, we hide that light under clay jars. And it's in plain sight. And all we have to do is like unveil that and show the world what God has done. And I know there are things all the time that God does for us. And so it's important to A, look around for those things, and then to be willing to share them, because I think a lot of times we're like, oh, that's embarrassing, or oh, people wouldn't understand. It's not about them understanding your feelings in the moment. It's about them seeing the way that God moved through the moment. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's awesome that you shared that. Like, of course, within our own story, there are little things that happen, of course. Like there's little things like your story. Of course, it's not actually little. It's a pretty big momentum thing that Jesus did in your life.
You can actually put a price tag on that. Like, it's
right. a couple $1,000s there. But of course, there's so much in our own testimonies that do happen. And of course, when sharing your testimony, you're not going to sit there for an hour or 2 or 3 hours sitting there sharing your entire life story of what Jesus has done, because of course the reality is somebody's going to be sitting there like, yeah, a lot happened, but I'm not going to be able to pay attention for that long to hear your entire testimony. And so of course it is important to, shrink it down a little bit to talk about the big things that Jesus did in your life. But at the same time, it is important to note that there are little things in your life that do become a part of your own testimony. There are things that happen, almost every day that you could attest to, say, you know what, Jesus did something right there in my own life that I really needed to happen. And that to me is showing that Jesus is truly working in my own life. And so that is something that you can put into your own testimony and say, you know what, there are so many things that have happened in my life that I can just without a doubt say that Jesus is constantly moving.
I feel like there's a falsehood that we believe that our testimony is the hardest moment of your life. Where it's like when someone's like, oh, Dorian, what's your testimony? Then Dorian needs to reach out into the depth of his soul and be like, what was the moment I was the most broken? Okay, that's my testimony. Your testimony, you don't have to tell the world of your deepest, darkest moment. You're telling the world of the goodness of God.
For sure. Yeah. And I even think that, it's important to say, like you said, it's not the hardest moments. It doesn't have to be the hardest moment. If there was a hard moment in your life that Jesus like completely worked through, then share that, by all means talk about that. But also it could be things that were just like important things to you that had happened. Like for me, like it could, like there was a time where I was super sick. I had been at a camp at Catalina. I was super sick. It was our last night at camp. I just wanted to make it through the night, and I was just like, God, like please, like just help me get through this night. And I had someone pray for me and just like try doing a healing prayer on me, and you know what, it worked for that night. I was able to make it through the rest of the night. I was actually able to make it home after that, feeling totally fine. And it wasn't until I started laying on my own bed here where I just felt completely like, then I started dying, but like Jesus had helped me get through the rest of the night and get me home to get through everything that I needed to get through and hoped for. And that was a moment that Jesus worked. And even during that healing prayer, I could feel Jesus with me. I could feel the Spirit with me of just like, like, I don't know if you guys have ever had this, like, or have been like in a prayerful moment or anything like that, where of course there's certain signs that you can feel that the Spirit is there with you. One of them being where your body's like extremely warm and you just feel at peace. Like that was a moment for me where I had felt all of that, the Spirit working. That was a moment for me without a doubt that Jesus was working in my life, and so of course it could be, like little moments like that where, of course, it wasn't a super dark moment for me or anything like that. I wasn't, in a terrible place or anything like that. It was just a moment where I was like, I needed healing, and Jesus brought healing in that moment. And so there's so many different areas where you can take from your own life that Jesus may have worked in, that you can attest to your testimony. You can attach that in and say, you know what, this is all the moments that Jesus worked in my life, And I'm super grateful for those moments, and I want to share that with you.
Yeah.
So, there's different things that you can look back on. And I think it's even cool to even start bringing up your testimony. Like, again, if you're listening and you've never even thought about what your testimony possibly could be, this could be an awesome time to just sit there and say, you know what? I want to look back at all those moments that Jesus may have been in my life and worked in my life where I thought seemed impossible. And you can start to say, hey, you know what? That's a part of my testimony. That's something that I would love to talk to my friends that don't even know who Jesus is and say, my loving Father did this for me. And, I want to invite you to come and know him too in that.
Definitely. Like a good friend of mine, he's had a really, really tough life and a lot of bad things have happened. But when he shares his testimony, he talks about Jesus, he doesn't mention any of that. He says, hey, I could not get sleep for years. Right. And then I picked up a Bible one night and said, hey, if this God is real, I'm going to get the best rest of my life. And then he did. Like awesome. That's his whole testimony.
Dang.
And it's short, it's sweet, and it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. So, I mean, again, if you're listening, your testimony can be a whole range of things. It could be a dark moment in your life that Jesus brought out, or it could be, a moment of healing. It could be just God helping you out financially. It could be anything that you just said, you know what? Jesus had helped me out in that scenario or brought me out of something in that scenario. And Jesus worked and Jesus moved and Jesus was totally there. And that could be your testimony. You hear all these extreme testimonies by people that, went through these crazy experiences where they had their entire family pass away. And then, they had cancer and then Jesus just moved through that, like this whole like crazy ordeal that you're just like, whoa, what the heck? Jesus was working. But like the reality is a lot of our lives aren't going to work that way. We have different things in our lives that Jesus works in that you should be entirely proud of and say, yeah, Jesus worked in that when I really needed it. Mm-hmm. And that's part of my testimony. And so I think that's also really important to know too.
Yeah. I'll never forget like my friends who say that they don't have a testimony. They're like, well, I've never had anything hard happen to me, or like, I've never really gone through anything. So I've just always kind of believed in the Lord and like, yeah, I just kind of do my life and I believe in Jesus and I love him and he loves me. And I remember one time my friend was like, I don't want to share my testimony because I don't have anything to say. And at that point in my life, her testimony actually was super powerful to me because I hear that and all I hear and like see is the steadfastness of her faith and the steadfastness of the Lord's provision and like love in her life. And so for a person who was feeling like at the time I was feeling like really a lot of chaos, and to see her and just see her steadfastness, her testimony meant the world to me. Right. And so it's so crazy to think that like even people who are like, well, I like have had a good life. I'm like fine. Like I've never struggled. Yeah. Like those testimony, like that can be a really powerful testimony to someone who doesn't have that and who's never had that.
Right.
Like yeah. Fact that they can look forward to the steadfastness of the Lord, that they will see it at some point.
Right. Yeah. And again, you were like you said, you're never going to know who you affect with your own testimony. Someone else could be dealing something similar to you or currently going through something that they really needed to hear because you may have gone through that. And mm-hmm. just to hear someone else has been through that and has gone through that might be super important for them. Yeah. They mm-hmm. might really need it in that moment. And so, like you said, it is super important, your own story, to share that just because someone else could really need that. Mm-hmm. Like, of course, my own story isn't this crazy thing either. Like I haven't gone through this. I've had a pretty good life. I'm pretty grateful for, the family I was raised in, where I've gotten to grow up in, where I went to college, everything like that. Not much went wrong in my life, but at the same time, I have my own experiences within that I went through that might be super important to share with someone else. Just because I've had a pretty grateful life, like that might not mean that someone else needs to hear about my own story too. And of course, you guys will get to hear our own testimonies next week as well, which we're super excited to share that. But again, you might have a story in your own life that you've been through that someone else might really need to hear. And you're never going to know who you might affect or who Jesus might have you affect there as well until you actually share your story. And so definitely. We really want to challenge you guys to sit down sometime soon, maybe even that's tonight, maybe that's tomorrow, this week, whatever it is that you have some downtime, why don't you just sit there with God and say, God, I would love for you to just show me, some moments where you moved in my life, or even just say, you know what, I want to look back at those moments and see when Jesus was working in my life, because this is an awesome time to do so. You're sitting around not doing anything at home. This is a perfect time to just sit there with God and say, show me those moments that you worked in my life. Some might be
definitely
obvious, more obvious than others, but at the same time, you're going to find some pretty amazing moments that Jesus was working that you may have not even noticed. So I encourage you guys all to do that. That could be an awesome treat for you guys to do. Of course, there might be some hard moments depending on your own story, but at the same time, just know that just knowing that you get to build your own story and share that with other people, that could really help someone out when they need it most.
Yeah. And then just that challenge, I would challenge everyone to pick one person, like at the very least, like pick a person. It could be like your closest friend, but like honestly, just be like, hey, I want to share my testimony with you. I want to share the good things that God has done in my life with you, in hopes that it will encourage you, in hopes that you would see the way that the Lord's moved in my life, and that maybe it would help you see the way he's moved in yours. So like, I would just encourage everyone to pick at least one person. And I'm actually going to follow that too, because sharing my testimony, like I said, is something that I struggle with. So I will challenge you, and then I'll follow my own challenge, and I'm going to pick a person and I'm going to share my testimony with them. Yep. And I just think that would be a really great way to start.
It's fantastic. Yeah. So challenge for you guys, start looking at your own testimony. If you've never thought about this before, start thinking about it. This is an awesome way. Look back at the things that Jesus has worked in, or maybe you didn't even notice he worked in. And it doesn't have to be this extreme amount of stuff that happened. It does not need to be this crazy miracle that happened or whatever. It might just be something little, but just knowing that Jesus worked in that is super important. So you getting to share that with someone else is awesome. And so we really want to challenge you guys to be able to come up with your own testimony and share that with others. And again, maybe you're like Lexi here. Maybe you have a testimony that you just haven't had the chance to share much with. We want to also challenge you guys as well to share your testimony with other people. You guys have plenty of friends. You have plenty of family, whoever it is that you're just sitting around not talking to or anything like that you could be talking to right now and sharing your own testimony. So we want to challenge you guys. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It literally could be a minute. It doesn't have to be this huge, long, amazing testimony. It could just be a minute that was super important to you that Jesus was working in. And we want to challenge you guys to do that. And also, if you guys are going to join us afterwards for our virtual gatherings, we also want to hear a couple of your guys' testimonies too. So if you guys are willing to share later on, we would love to hear what you guys have been through as well, and how Jesus has worked in your own life. Because getting to hear other people's testimonies could be a little bit of a motivation for you as well, to say, whoa, actually, I've had something similar happen in my life before that you didn't even realize happened. Or it could just be like, wow, that Jesus really worked in your life, and I think he's also working in my life. It could be that little bit of a push that you really need as well. So, yeah.
Definitely.
Testimonies are awesome.
There's some power, like when a bunch of believers gather together and they just talk about how Jesus moved. There's power there.
I love those types of conversations, just getting to hear what other people have been through. Also, it lifts my faith up as well. Just because, of course, I see what Jesus is doing in my life, but getting to see what Jesus is doing in other people's lives too, that's really motivating for me. And especially as a ministry lead, just getting to hear what Jesus is doing in other people's lives currently that's awesome.
It's so encouraging. It's like, oh, the Lord could do that in my life too. That actually happens. That happened in the Bible.
Right. Exactly. Of course. Yeah. It might sometimes feel like a long shot too for us that, Jesus might not be working, but of course, know that he is definitely working. And if you're struggling to even come up with this story saying that, I haven't seen Jesus move in my life very much, know that your story, isn't ending right there. Your story is continuing moving forward as well. Your story might not even be close to done right now. Yeah. So also know that if you're struggling to come up with your own testimony, know that Jesus is not done with you yet either, just because you might right now too. I think that's super important to note as well. So do you guys have any last thoughts on testimonies?
One thing real quick. I did this talk with my junior high student leaders before, and I felt so proud. I gave this like amazing 20-minute long sermon about the power of testimony, all these things. And at the very end, they're like, okay, so how do I share my testimony? And I'm like, Oh, come on.
There it is.
So I played it out. I did a lot of research, and I talked with a few mentors of mine, and this friend, Brandon Hendricks, he's a great guy. He gave me this like very definitive way to share a testimony. If you don't mind, I actually came a little bit prepared. Check this out. Hold on.
He's very prepared. Whoa. The whiteboard. Not only do you come with your Bible prepared, you're coming with a whiteboard.
I feel like.
Is that in frame? Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna stand over here. So basically,
Professor Dorian.
No, that doesn't even sound right. I'll take Pastor Dorian, but no, not just Dorian. That's just weird. Basically, there's 3 sections to a testimony. Okay. Oh, this marker's not good. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Yeah, before.
Okay, cool. All right. So there's the before. There's what I call the DM. This is not a good marker. I'm sorry. And then there's the after. So when constructing a testimony, you use, there's 3 parts to it. There's a before. Is that backwards for you guys, or can you read that?
No, it's great.
Okay, cool. So it's before, it's a DM or a defining moment, and then there's the after. So the before is like everything. Well, really, you want to start with the DM. That's where you want to start. And it's, where did I see God move in my life? So for my friend, when he's talking about how he got no sleep, and then he prayed, and then he got this amazing sleep thing, right?
Right.
And it's great. So that's his defining moment. And he talks about before that moment and then after, because there was a clear change in his life from that point on. Right. For me, like, my defining moment wasn't when I was converted. It came a few years later, and like a bunch of stuff happened. That's my defining moment. Yeah. Some people, they met God at a summer camp and he showed up in some amazing way, or some Sunday service. Others, it is simple as, hey, I didn't get sleep and now I did. And then there's other people, Lexi, like what you're talking about, how like, I can't imagine where God moved in my life or did anything. Like that's great. Honestly, that's actually pretty awesome, which means you've had a very blessed life. That's one of the best testimonies you can have, because your defining moment happened 2,000 years ago on the cross. And that is the best defining moment. Like, no matter what, it should all go back to the cross. But when you're thinking about sharing your testimony, construct it in this way, where it centers around a defining moment where your life was changed somehow by Christ. And then you talk about the before, the after. Like, you structure it in that way. It should take 2 minutes. Short and sweet. You're delivering a punchline, and it's all about what God has done, not what we've done.
Yes. Love that.
Yeah.
And one thing, it bugs me, so many people do this. Don't make the before sound better than the after. Like, I heard one guy, he was sharing his testimony, and he was like, yeah, dude, I was going out partying all the time and drinking and hooking up with so many people. And then I met Jesus. No, I don't. I go to church on Sundays. I sometimes serve. I read the Bible. But like, you're missing the point.
Right.
The point is, your life is so much better with Jesus. Don't make the before sound better than the after.
Right.
Just some like fun things to think about when we go through testimonies, but short and sweet, 2 minutes. It's centered around what Jesus has done in your life.
Yep.
And it's powerful, dude. It's powerful. Lives change all the time because of testimonies.
Yep.
That's
for
super
sure.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. I love that you share that. And I love just the defining moment factor. Just thinking back, what is my defining moment? You know, and that could just be your starting point too for your own testimony. Just looking at, well, what was my defining moment? Where was that moment that Jesus entered in and just completely transformed everything? You know, what did my life look like before that? And what did it look like after? There should be this amazing amount of goodness that came through that.
Yeah.
And that could just be, that could just be the basis of your own story. And so again, we really want to encourage you guys within this week just to start thinking, well, what is my defining moment? What is your defining moment that just changed everything? And we want you guys to be able to come up with that and share that with someone else. It can be an amazing challenge for you guys. And of course, there's going to be some discomfort there for sure. Sharing your own testimony can be very vulnerable, and that can be really extremely hard. But again, you are never going to know who you might impact because of that. You won't know until you might even see it in heaven too. That moment where you get to go into heaven and see who you might have impacted just through your own story. That might just be one more person that gets to enter into heaven with you. So again, it could be, it might not be an incredible story or anything like that, but it could transform someone else too. So again,
definitely,
we want to challenge you guys to find that defining moment for you. But with that, we're going to have to end the podcast here. But again, we want to see you guys after this in the virtual gatherings. We want to hear some of your guys' testimonies. We want to see what you guys have to say about this as well. So we thank you guys so much for listening in today. Again, Dorian, Lexi, thank you guys for coming along to discussing this. We can't wait to hear your guys' testimonies next week. I can't wait to share mine. It's going to be fantastic. And we hope that gets to encourage you guys as well. So again, with that, we want to end the podcast here. So we thank you guys so much for listening in, watching.
Real quick. Nate, has anybody contacted us from Jacksonville, Florida?
Not yet.
Okay, my challenge still stands. If you're from Jacksonville, Florida, first person to contact us, I will buy you lunch.
There you go.
Dorian promised. I will buy you lunch if you're from Jacksonville, Florida.
He won't fly you out here, though. He'll just buy you lunch. So
yeah, I'll Postmate it.
If you're willing to pay a couple $100 to fly out here, fantastic. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. We can't wait to hear some of your guys' testimonies and who you might impact through this as well. So we'll see you guys after this or next week. Bye, guys.
Woo.
Bye.